Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today is the day where we can talk about the experience that I had with Diablo 4. And we're also going to be showing some footage and talking a little bit briefly about pros and cons and just some things that, first impressions about the game. So let's jump into it. So once you launch the game, you load in and you are met with the campfire, which gives me massive Diablo 2 vibes. Now, during this presentation version of the game, basically this beta demo version, you are only allowed to hit 25, and you are only allowed basically in the first act or first zone, and then there's only 3 characters available. So you have the rogue, the barbarian, and then the sorcerer, which also could be sorceress. Each one of these classes can also be customized, both male and female, and there's a ton of customizations that you can actually do. So once you actually load up, you kind of start off, and there is epic Blizzard, cinematics. Honestly, I really like that stuff a lot. It feels very clean, very dark. The game is super dark overall. And then after the cinematics, we're really not going to try to get into like spoilers or anything in this. So we jump in and we just have our basic attacks, right? And, we're met with kind of like this tutorial zone, kind of discovering where we are after like the cinematics and getting our, a handle on some things. Also, I will mention at the character creation screen, you do kind of like, you do actually choose whether the difficulty is going to be level 1 or level 2, and that's basically like adventure mode, I believe, which is like easy for like real casual players, maybe first time players, and then there's veteran mode, which is difficulty 2, and this will basically be like, what most of the ARPG folks will be playing on. If you're watching this video, you'll probably be playing on veteran mode and all that stuff. It's a little bit harder. Unless you're maybe playing hardcore or something and you want to take it a little bit easier. So one thing you will notice in this game, that the music and the sound design is absolutely on point. It feels really good. It sounds amazing. I would highly recommend headphones for this game. And also, I do feel like the story is pretty good. Like, it is kind of interesting overall. And then other thing is the skills all feel good. The the sounds with the skills, the visual effects, the monsters, it's dark and scary, and the combat feels really good. I do enjoy that quite a bit. Now there's several activities that you can actually do in this game, such as like world events. It's a very open world, and the whole open world is it's all static, right? It's not going to generate any, like, no randomized areas or anything like that. Things can change based on events and stuff. We'll get to that in a second. So in the world, you have, their difficulty for that world that you're in. And then you have the monsters. They all have a level, classic ARPG style. Then we go with the world feel. You could just be playing along, and the amazing music and gameplay and combat and monsters that you all have like really sets the tone for the game that you're playing. And there'll be a bunch of things that you can be coming across when you're just playing the game, such as like events where you could even be playing solo or in a group, and come across this event where you have to like sacrifice your own blood in order to like complete this altar ritual or save this caravan of people from these like bandits that are rushing out of nowhere, or demons and stuff like that. Then there's also these altars of Lilith, and these altars of Lilith are like these hidden like chests around the area, like Easter eggs, and they'll give you various bonuses. So it's really good for like completionists, and then it's also gonna actually benefit you for like this renown system. So every like area has like this renown system or reputation per se, and this reputation, if you build it high enough, it'll give you like skills and you know, various rewards as well. So, and this, like, that specifically, the reputation system, I believe, goes from character to character. Now, also, there's these town hubs, or towns. Basically, like, you know, there's the regular town, which is Kiovashad here in the Fractured Peaks, which is the play area, the first zone that we were allowed to play in the presentation mode, or demo, whatever you want to call this. So yeah, that's like basically the main town. And then there's these waypoints in the area, kind of like in Diablo 3 or Diablo 2, you know, you have more waypoints in that act. However, in this game, a lot of these waypoints kind of have their own like feel or town or something. Like, not every single waypoint will have a, you know, town with it or a blacksmith or something, you know what I mean? But like there will be there's some uniqueness, there's some feel to it, and sometimes like I said, it's just like a mini town or something that could be tied to the story and stuff. So waypoints are kind of used a little bit differently just to navigate the open world a little bit more, kind of like when you open up the D3 map, I would say, is probably reminds me about it, but it's more of like an open world, you know, hop from this place to that place type of thing. Now, this actually does bring up one thing, is that this game overall isn't as fast paced as Diablo 1 or Diablo 2 or Diablo 3. It's not so much about like, you know, farming Mephisto as fast as you possibly can, save and exit, and then go back in, farm Mephisto, save and exit, you know, blasting constantly, or doing chaos runs or whatever in Diablo 2. Or then in Diablo 3, it's like constantly doing rifts. It's like, okay, what are you doing right now? Town is lava, like get back in there and start farming. It's like, no, it takes some time to like travel. But as I said, there are events and various things that happen. Now, one thing in the open world is that there's these areas called Strongholds, and I'd say that these are probably my favorite for the open world. Basically, think of it as like a corrupted waypoint per se. Could have to do, it has like their own story and lore behind this, I believe. For the Strongholds, there were 3 Strongholds from what I know, with the first zone, the Fractured Peaks, and you basically have to like clear the waypoint. This whole town per se is like overrun by demons, and you have to do like these specific objectives, and then at the very end you fight a boss, and then you ring the bell and you save everybody. If you ever played Far Cry, it's kind of like that. And you know, where the outposts, where the enemy was there before, and then you save it all, and now it's yours. Like, now it's your, you know, town, and you can use that waypoint and stuff like that. But I actually do like it. I know I might be downplaying it a little bit by just saying like, oh, it's like maybe like this game or that game, but like I really do feel like that is probably one of the more enjoyable open world experiences. Unfortunately, there's only a limited amount. Once you got that there, then it's done. Which actually brings me up to one other thing is world states. And I know I'm jumping over here, like here and there, but I just want to talk about all this stuff as fast as I can. But like world states, if you're playing with another person that's like hosting and they haven't done that stronghold, even though if you have done that stronghold, that like corrupted waypoint area type of thing, you won't be able to like use that because that's not like active in their world state. So it's kind of interesting in some ways. You know, there will be some quirks here and there. It's the way it's got to be done, you know. Diablo 4 feels more like an MMO than an ARPG in some areas, but in the ARPG field there are dungeons. Now, one thing I don't like about the dungeons is that it does take time to get from place to place, as I said before. But if you are an immersive player or a casual player, I think you're gonna love it. If you played WoW, I mean, that honestly could be something fun as well. If it doesn't bother you that it takes some time to get from place to place, then great. But for me, Diablo is like blast, man. You know, I think Diablo, it's like you go next Greater Rift, let's go. Next Chaos Run, let's go. Bale Run, let's go. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I like, the fast-paced stuff. Now, there are some things, dungeons. Okay, back to dungeons. I got a little sidetracked. So we go back in, we find these dungeons, and basically these are, there's basically a reward that you can, the rewards you can get for the dungeons, and inside what a dungeon is basically this area that's randomly, semi-randomly generated, where there's going to be a specific tile set. Probably not so random that you couldn't eventually read it, or that they're not that random, so you could probably eventually read the tiles themselves and like start doing map reading, kind of like you have in D2, or like kind of guesstimate where things are next. But you'll basically come across, like, you know, free the prisoners or do this challenge, and it'll get you to the next stage of the dungeon. Kill this many monsters in order to get to the next stage of the dungeon. And at the very end of the dungeon, after you clear all of it or clear the objectives, then you fight the dungeon boss. And the dungeon boss will, you know, eventually get the completion, and you'll get the rewards for the dungeon. Now, the dungeon bosses are kind of cool. I like the way it feels. It's not too crazy. Some of them are really hard, though, I will say. But I don't feel like there was a lot of mechanics in the dungeon bosses. But there were some here and there, and it made some of the fights interesting. Now, once you actually complete these dungeons, some of these dungeons, I don't think all of them, but some of these dungeons will have something called an aspect. And there's this like Codex of power, and I'll explain what this is. So basically, if you remember in like Diablo 3, there's like legendary powers, right? And once you like extract in the Kanai's cube, then you have like this legendary power that's on you. Now think of it like that, but instead of extracting it and putting it into your cube, you extract the legendary power, and then now you can do stuff with it. Like you can put it on a rare item and then make that rare item like a legendary. Or if you get a legendary with like all the stats you kind of liked, but it doesn't have the legendary power you want, you can use the occultist in town to be able to transfer that legendary power over. So I believe you can only do that once, but this is a really, really cool like way of like customizing some of the things that you actually want. But yeah, that's kind of what it is. But what an aspect is, or a legendary aspect for the Codex of Power is from the dungeons, this is like a lesser version of a legendary, where you can basically guarantee that you're going to have this legendary power. Now, if you find the actual legendaries or legendaries like that have this specific stat, let's just say I'll make one up, you know, +5 to, you know, werewolf form. Obviously we didn't have druid, but, you know, +5 to werewolf form, whatever. With the aspect, if you got the real item, it would give you like +10, you know what I mean? So these are kind of like less the Walmart version per se, but it's like guaranteed and you can get it. So if you like start off a character and you know, you kind of want to maybe do like a speed run or something, you might want to go to a specific dungeon in order to hit a specific legendary aspect. But it does require materials and stuff like that in order to be able to craft all this stuff. But anyways, next thing, moving on from the dungeons, we already talked about the strongholds. There's also world bosses, and these things are on like rotation, kind of. I don't know the frequency and all that stuff of them, but you can basically fight this huge world boss. It reminds me kind of like Diablo Immortal, but done, I think, like cooler and better in my opinion. Where it's like this thing spawns in, and it's gonna be like a half an hour warning or whatever, where this boss spawns in, and everybody's waiting for this boss to spawn in, and once it comes in, like, you know, it's gonna, you know, absolutely. First of all, it like zooms the camera out. You get this whole cinematic feel, and the thing is massive in comparison to you. We did actually, Echo Hack and I actually posted, or he posted a video of our interview. We had like an interview where we talked about Diablo 4 yesterday. If you want to go check that out, go check out Echo Hack. YouTube or Twitch. But yeah, he's a cool guy. We talked a lot more in depth than what I'm going into right now today. But world bosses are very cool. They're very strong, and you know, they will give you specific like rewards that you'll need in order to like upgrade your gear and stuff. Now these things aren't going to show up like, you know, on Saturday to like interrupt your work schedule or something and be like, man, I have to work Saturday, why I can't do that. It's like, no, I think they happen like multiple times a day, and after you get it, you should be fine. So you have an opportunity, but it would be something along the lines of, hey, you might want to message your Discord friend or something. It's like, hey, this is happening, whatever, if you want to join in, but it's not super urgent. But yeah, it's kind of a cool mechanic where the boss is like super strong, and we'll just wipe screens if everybody's too low of a level and stuff. Again, we only had like up to level 25, and you know, the scaling of everything, there's more difficulties, there's more gear and loot, so we didn't have a whole lot of opportunity to like test what it might look like in the end game and stuff. But you know, just from what we experienced, bosses are like, world bosses are super strong. Hardcore, just to touch on this quickly, this is a check mark. You can literally just check and uncheck hardcore. You know, it's literally just like it was in like kind of D2. I don't think there's any cheat deaths forms like there were in Diablo 3, but I'm actually not 100% on this one. I think they're gonna not have that, but we'll see. And then yeah, the skill trees, skills and skill trees for each class. Basically you start off with like your basic attack, and then you go into like these core skills, and as you go farther into your skill tree turns more and more into like the specialization of your class. So like there's kind of like these hubs that you start from the very beginning, and you know, you can choose your basic skills, kind of like the generators in Diablo 3, and then you go to like the core skills, and these core skills will kind of, you know, start defining some of the builds that you use. Maybe like upheaval on the barbarian, where you kind of just use this like, you know, you just like bury your sword into the ground and then like throw a bunch of rocks and everywhere. And the other thing is, I will say about the skill tree, is there are, you know, there's some investment that you can put into the skill tree. So there could be 1-point wonders, right, that you could use, like passives and stuff. But there's also, you know, for these core skills, let's say upheaval, you can put up to 5 points in all these skills, and each point is going to increase the damage or increase the effect that it has. And then there's also like this passive past these, which kind of make it a little bit better. And then there's one more passive where it's like, I can make this skill do this, or I can make the skill do that. Let's say like vulnerable state, this skill now adds a vulnerable state, or this skill now stuns or something, you know, something like that. But you can't have both. So you have this like main skill where you can put extra points in to do more damage, then you make it a little bit better, and then you get to choose from like A to B, whatever passive you want, depending on the playstyle you're looking for and all that. So hybrid builds can definitely be a thing. The fantasy of the character, well, at least it looks like it can be. We only had level 25, so we don't really know. Maybe it's like really bad to go hybrid, but from what it looks like in the skill trees and stuff, you can just like straight up go right in and, you know, play a rogue as, you know, ranged bow skills, and then like, you know, you have your close dagger, like stealth stabby modes and stuff like that. So yeah. Yeah, there's also at the very end, we couldn't actually get there, but there's also like this main class passive. It's like your ultimate passive that really starts to define your character a bit, and like kind of fits in maybe with some of the classes, the skills that you chose for the class and the synergies and stuff. So yeah, the visuals, like I said, are pretty crazy. There's some new mechanics, like with the globes that you might have seen, where you have like, you know how like in previous Diablos you had like different status effects. In Diablo 2 you had like poison, your globe turns green. When you get BO'd or battle orders or buffed or something, you know, there's like this aura like glow below your feet and stuff. This stuff, or then in like Diablo 3, you know how you had like the little squares that show up like right above your XP bar. They kind of show you when you are, you know, receiving a specific buff and all that. Some of that still is there in Diablo 3, but some of those like status effects are all moved to your like globe. So like for example, when you get vulnerable and you'll take more damage, your globe will crack, right? When you're fortified, which is like the super, it's like a health shield where you start to do more damage, and you also have like kind of like a damage reduction type of thing going on too. It'll show up like even more pure red, you know, stuff like that. So there's a lot of different mechanics, and then there's also the evade and then the healing. I guess we could talk about evade. Basically it's just like kind of like the evade D3 on controller that you used to be able to do, or I mean I guess you can still do it on controller D3, but you know, evade, it's like 3 to 5 second timer. Depending on the gear you have, you can change this around and stuff, but you know, it's timed where it's like, okay, you have to be kind of smart with your evade. Like in this specific combat situation, you might want to save it for that one, you know, this and that. And then the potions, you will have to like upgrade them. Like at the alchemist, there's a bunch of different vendors and stuff you can get in town, like blacksmith, alchemist. Can't think of more right now, but yeah, you basically, you use a potion and some of it will be instant and the rest of it will just kind of like heal over time as a percentage of your health. So you want to be able to like upgrade those, and you'll need like the world items in order to like, or world recipe materials, you know, Gallovine or whatever you might find in order to upgrade your potions. So yeah, the itemization, I mean, I will say, like, I guess we could get into pros and cons. Pros and cons, I think pros, it's cool that we have a new Diablo game coming. The itemization stuff, I mean, it's cool. I think it's an interesting take, but I am interested to see how this all plays out. And I mean, it's not Diablo 2 itemization, right? At least that, to me at least. And that's something that's close to my heart. I also, as like another con, is that the fact that it's not as fast paced of a game, it just kind of doesn't feel like the Diablo speed, you know, that I'm like craving. I mean, I can always go back and play D3 or D2 or something if I want to go blast or whatever, but it's just kind of like, I wish there was something more, or didn't, because like, for example, even the town, like when you're navigating town, these towns are like pretty extensive. Like Kiyovershad, it takes you a while to like walk from one place to another. So I mean, not like forever, but let's just like take some time, you know. And you kind of have to like change your mindset when you're playing Diablo 4 versus the previous Diablos in some sense. But overall, the artwork feels great. This is a really good base game to start with, and again, there's going to be many development years for this game, and if we stay vocal with our opinions, then maybe it'll turn into something that's like really, really good. You know, every game is not necessarily going to be perfect on launch, but like, yeah, and then with the huge development and the seasons and all that stuff, it could be exciting to see how it all plays out, you know, as time goes on. But these are just my first impressions and just explaining some of the concepts. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and some of the gameplay in the background and various things. Much love to all of you. You are all beasts.